Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. Be inspired by the voices of visionaries, changemakers, and ordinary, extraordinary people who do what they do, all for the love of learning.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm Lady Liberty, and this is episode number 68. In tonight's episode, we'll explore the issues surrounding home education beyond the bell curve. Is homeschooling or unschooling possible or even advisable for children who don't fit into the mold of the typical kid? How can children with neurological or sensory differences get an interest-led education when their interests are intensely narrow or they are reluctant to try new things? What if a child has learning differences that makes it different to grasp certain academic concepts? We'll explore these questions and more with tonight's panelists. It's a true honor to be sharing time with these incredible women, and I'm anxious to dive into this topic deeper. But first, I'm going to give a brief introduction to each of our panelists, then we'll start the conversation. Although these introductions are brief, we have more information about each of our panelists on the show notes page located at consciousconsumernetwork.tv, and look for the show notes page for episode number 68. There you will find more extensive information about each of our panelists' backgrounds and links to their projects and websites. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Julie. Julie's a mom to two boys, 11 and 15, and a partner to her husband, Bill. Julie is an author of an award-winning memoir called Nothing Short of Joy, and is an inspirational speaker, creative living coach, artist, and lifelong student of personal growth. In 2005, she went to sign her son up for kindergarten, and she was overwhelmed by the rules and underwhelmed by the love. The reality of giving up her previously unfettered life to the system was crushing for Julie. So they took the leap into the world of home education. Julie writes that the difficulties of being born a dwarf prepared her for life, how to live and flourish outside of the lines. Unschooling has inspired her family to follow the current educational belief system unschooling has inspired her family to unfollow, that's important, the current educational belief system, or BS as she calls it, and instead follow their own inner truth, enthusiasm, wisdom, wonderment within her family structure. Julie and her family continue to learn how to use the challenges and face as a family as a springboard to spirit and living a wholehearted life and creating a joyful world she feels proud to call home. So Welcome to tonight's panel, Julie.
Thank you, Lainey. Good to be here.
You're so very welcome. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Christina. Christina is an unschooling mom of 3, ages 15, 8, and 6. Empowering others to hear and follow their inner voice of wisdom is her life purpose, which she began with learning to hear and follow her own. Christina is passionate about trusting children with the freedom to play and learn by following their interests and their own inner wisdom. In 2009, Christina was presented with the most challenging opportunity yet for learning to trust her children and trust herself. Her middle child was diagnosed with severe autism, and she began her process of learning how to support his extra needs, communicate with him, and practice radical acceptance. This continues to be the most surreal, powerful, and awe-inspiring experience in her life. It informs all areas of her life, and it has pushed her into a fast track of shedding limiting beliefs, fears, and doubts. As bumpy as this process has been, it has allowed her to enjoy previously unimaginable levels of freedom, connection, creativity as both a parent and a human. In 2013, Christina created Radiant Living and Learning, which presents workshops on alternatives in education, parenting, and physical, mental, and spiritual health care. Her newest project is a video workshop series called Level Up, which combines ancient healing modalities with modern brain hemisphere research to facilitate mental and physical healing. So welcome to tonight's panel, Christina.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You're welcome, and you'll get used to that mute button, I promise. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Brenda. Brenda is an unschooling mom of 5 beautiful, talented, strong, loving, and kind children. Brenda is a special needs mother herself who was diagnosed with Asperger's, living with bipolar 1 and PTSD. Brenda's eldest daughter is now 13, has dyslexia and hearing loss. When Brenda's oldest was in kindergarten, she was bullied, so Brenda and her husband realized that school wasn't the best fit for her family. Now, years later, as an unschooler, Brenda's daughter has found her passions, which are horses, The Walking Dead, Minecraft, and being outdoors. Currently, her daughter is in the process of teaching herself how to read. Brenda's 11-year-old daughter has a mood disorder, Asperger's, and sensory processing disorder diagnosis. Unschooling has given her 11-year-old the freedom to listen to her body and practice self-care. Brenda's 8-year-old daughter was vaccine injured and has a form of epilepsy. Due to the amount of seizures she has had in a short period of time and the lack of adequate oxygen to her brain, Brenda's 8-year-old has developmental delays. 2 years ago, the seizures finally slowed down significantly, and she has not had one seizure in several months. Brenda's 8-year-old daughter's passions are crafts, being outdoors, and learning. Brenda also has a 6-year-old son that has Asperger's and sensory processing diagnosis. The world is a very hard place for him. He has to wear noise-canceling headphones because of his sensitivity to noise. But his passions are dinosaurs, animals, machines, and space. And finally, Brenda's youngest is a 2-year-old boy who is curious, loving, playful, and outgoing. He makes his whole family laugh with his silly facial expressions. He has a love for rocks, water, and animals. Brenda will talk more about pursuing a diagnosis for her children for a multitude of reasons, but says the diagnoses have helped her and her husband to understand what each of her children are going through in order to learn the skills and tools that each child requires. So welcome to tonight's conversation, Brenda.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to it.
You're very welcome. Fantastic. You're very, very welcome. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to Kristen. Kristen has been facilitating learning through play with over 1,000 children. 1,000 for over 15 years. Her broad experience ranges from one-to-one coaching, museum programs, camps, co-ops, curriculum design, and enrichment programs with children, teenagers, adults, and parents. In 2012, she founded Crayon Power, an alternative learning company that helps kids and families learn through exploration in environments that foster both independence and social skills. Her goal is to strengthen children's problem-solving skills and encourage their emotional intelligence through visual art, music, writing, and just good old-fashioned goofing around. Her most recent project is Crayon Power Explorative Learning Labs, a new micro school for registered homeschooling children opening in Brooklyn this fall. So welcome to the conversation tonight, Kristen. We're so happy you're part of it.
Thanks, Lainey. I'm excited to be here too.
Wonderful. Well, why don't we start the conversation with you? If you could share a little bit more about maybe your background and what brought you to the place where we're talking about the topic of home educating children beyond the bell curve. Why is that an important conversation?
Well, it's an important conversation for me because I'm in a slightly different place. I don't have children of my own right now, and the 1,000 children, it is an accurate number, but it's kind of a cheat because a lot of those children, were all together at the same time, so in museums or camps or through a few different types of play-based programs that I've been trained in, such as floor time. I used to be a volunteer for the Sunrise program, and the reason why I found those modalities and those forms of what at the time I was calling therapies, listening therapies and sound therapies, art therapy, was because I myself was experiencing the things that the children that I work with. It's really that simple. So I've had seizures. I had dyslexia, or have it, but now it's manageable and I can read at a rapid rate. I did not read until I was in the 9th grade, and my actually on my website it states that they told my dad, who's a lovely, wonderful father, your daughter can't read. And he said, "What are you talking about? She's upstairs in her room reading for hours and hours and hours those Little House on a Prairie books." And those are 3rd grade level books. And I had scratched and circled every single word in that book and was desperately trying to figure out what Laurel Ingalls Wilder was saying. And so, I just really, really connect to the kids that find me. And I really mean that. These kids, they find me. They ask their parents if they can work with me or if I can come play with them. And so my goal is to help kids to find their learning and their play styles, and then properly voice and communicate it to grown-ups in a way that they feel empowered and will be listened to. And that's really what I feel unschooling is all about. It's about being a facilitator, not a teacher, and being curious and it's certainly not for the faint of heart. In respect to, I have great respect for the parents that I work with, because they really have to know their children. They have to know what they're liking, and then they have to jump in front of them and be like, "Hey, those vampires that you love so much, well, there's this like Mary Shelley, and there's actual people who drink blood in the world, and like these are all the things that you can know about and learn about that are related to vampires that don't relate to Buffy." So I think that's really exciting, and I'm really, really honored to get to be a part of that process, especially since I don't have kids of my own.
I think that's amazing, and the 1,000 kids you've worked with, I think that is Incredible number. So
I
you mentioned,
tallied it just to make sure I wasn't BSing, and I was like, no, it's actually accurate at this point. It is true.
crazy. You mentioned play styles, and I love that you mentioned that in place of learning styles. But do you feel that the two are related?
It's how we intuitively learn. It's how we were designed to learn as human beings. Play is the natural way in which we tap into neurologically our being, and it ups our dopamine levels when we're relaxed, when we're comfortable, when we're at peace. Then we're much more prone to have lasting neural connections. So there's a reason why a lot of the parents that I work with, I ask them, what did you learn in the ninth grade in biology? And they can't tell me, but then I say, what did you love when you were in the eighth grade? Oh, I was a dancer. Oh, I played soccer. Oh, I loved horses. And then I ask them to tell me about that, and they can talk for 2 to 4 hours about it. And there's a reason why that happened, is because they were under stress when they were learning about biochemistry, and they probably were passing notes to whoever they liked at the time. And so there's a lot of things going on that are distracting the learning. But if you're really concentrating, and I feel is really important for kids that are, labeled with disabilities or considered to be on the autism spectrum, especially kids that are considered to have attention deficit. It's said that they need consistency, they need routines, they need to be exposed to diverse amounts of subjects, because they're so fixated on these little topics. But the truth of the matter is because they're so fixated and they're so interested in those topics, you can teach all sorts of things. You can teach math, you can teach chemistry, you can I mean, if a kid wants bacon, you can teach them all about chemistry and how it makes you happy. And there's lots of ways to do that. And so I really believe that unschooling is the best way to go, as long as it's done in a way that's really intentional, and loving and playful.
Yeah, Kristen, thank you. What a great way to start off the show. You mentioned stress, and I think I'm going to ask the question a little bit later on to the panel about stress, but let's just continue with the introductions and finding out from our panelists why they feel that this is an important conversation to have. So can we go to Brenda next? Brenda, I would love, make sure, unmute yourself. I would love to hear, you've got a house full of kids and a 2-year-old to mention. Wow. Please tell us about your life.
Well, I found it important because when my oldest was younger, I knew that something wasn't quite right, and I didn't know what to do. So I went and I had her tested, and nobody could give me any answers. And so we put her into Head Start, and she was in that for 2 years, and it's like a Montessori hands-on type of learning, and she thrived. I mean, she learned to write her name. It took them over a year just to get her to write her first name where the letters weren't backwards and mixed up. It took a lot of therapy, a lot of play therapy, hands-on therapy. Then they tested her hearing, and they found out that she has hearing loss. So we had her go in for more testing, and they found out her tubes were too small and they weren't growing. So she had infant-sized tubes at the age of 5. So she had surgery, and they put in new tubes, and it ended up that they fell out, and they suggested that we wait until she hits puberty because sometimes they will grow. And so because of her hearing loss, she was able to observe the world differently than she would have if she could hear better. and it gave her a new perspective, and it made her who she is today, and she's pretty amazing. But through kindergarten, they wanted to put her into special ed classes because she wasn't picking up reading. And I'd gotten frustrated because all the work they did in Head Start, she regressed. And so we had to start all over again. And so we decided to pull her out. And we tried doing school at home, and that wasn't working for us. And in 2009, we learned about unschooling, and what led me on the path we're on now with getting the diagnosis and learning about our kids on a deeper level was I was frustrated when I first learned about unschooling, because I'd go on these groups and ask for help, and I get these comments of not doing it right, or I need to do it better, or I'm not doing something correctly. And I'm like banging my head against the wall because I'm doing all these things that are being suggested, but something's missing. And a friend added me to a group for atypical kids, and it opened up a whole new world for us. And things started making sense. And I started learning from other unschoolers that, labels aren't bad, and there shouldn't be a stigma, that they have a purpose. And so we went that route. And because we have the multiple special needs, it's helped us learn our children, how their brain works, how we can teach them and facilitate them in a way that suits them and helps them learn effectively that they enjoy, so they sticks with them. So that's kind of our story, is why it's important for me to share, my story, because I know lots of unschoolers are against labels, and they don't believe that we should label kids. But in my opinion, it helps us understand them. And it doesn't mean we have to put them in a box. It just means we're learning about them and who they are and how they learn and the wiring of their brain. So that's why I think it's important.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I'm so glad that you're a part of tonight's show. I know you were feeling very nervous about coming on and sharing, but I'm so grateful that you are. I think that getting a diagnosis, and I'm glad that you brought this up, I think that getting a diagnosis is like any other tool, like math, like anything that helps us facilitate and helps us understand ourselves as the learner as well. So thank you so much, Brenda, for being a part of tonight's show and tonight's panel, and trusting yourself and stepping outside of your comfort zone and coming on the show. So I'm really grateful. And Julie, Julie, I can't wait to hear what your take is on this, and why you feel that this is an important conversation to have, and share a little bit more about your background. So the floor is yours.
What's so amazing to me about when we talk about people who are different, my dwarfism, anyone outside the bell curve, it's so amazing because as humans, I think one of our greatest commonalities is that we feel different. And yet those of us who really thought we were weird or we'd never fit in, I thought I just would always be the oddball. And then I come to discover over the years, sharing with friends and sharing with family, then sharing through my book, that this is a universal fear of being rejected, of being humiliated, of being different. And right now in our world with craziness, a crazy election, violence, and all of it kind of funneling down to the fear of diversity, the fear of different religions, different preferences, different anything. And it causes people to struggle with their own fear of being in the not belonging club, of being not accepted. So, here we are talking about what looks like a small niche, a little niche about different abled or those who have extra needs, whatever it is. And yet it's a really big world issue about how to be inclusive, how to love everyone despite, and particularly to love ourselves when we are on the outside of what we think are the inner circle. There is no such thing, because those in the inner circle who are pretending that they've got it together or this is the way life should be, that's coming from a place of insecurity, a place of lack, a place of extreme fear that on the outside may look like arrogance, may look like superiority, and yet I've never met someone who displays those kinds of things who wasn't frightened on the inside by who they thought people might find out they are, that imposter syndrome. And I felt that as a kid. I hid the fact that I was different physically. I couldn't hide that. But I hid that I felt radically different on the inside as well. I thought that my beliefs were different. I thought that my feelings were different. And hallelujah, finding as in my later years that I'm not different. And this is such good news for people who are desperately lonely and alone and worried that they'll never be accepted. And it starts from the inside when we start to love and accept what we do have, who we are. And then we become a voice for those who also felt disenfranchised. So that's why this is a huge topic. It's a really, really valuable topic. And I'm so glad that, we're here to talk about it. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for being here to share your point of view. I just adore you, Julie. You know that. So let's move on to Christina. Christina, I cannot wait to hear your background and your story as well. And I really am so fascinated about the work, the new series that you're doing, but maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So first, the floor is yours. Share with us why you feel this is such an important conversation.
Well, the most basic reason that I think this is so important is because school is just not meeting the needs of so many children. And for that matter, school at home is not cutting it. Brenda already mentioned that they tried school at home and it was a disaster. And, in the unschooling special needs group, we have, I don't even know it. I think it's getting close to 3,000 members now. And every week we have 50 or so new people that join, and they say either, number one, they're done with school because they've tried with the IEPs and the ARD meetings, and they've tried to get the system to help their child and meet their child's needs, and it's just not happening. The anxiety is too much, and they're done. Or they're saying, I've been trying school at home, and we're at each other's throats, or I can't get my kid to do anything. I can't, whatever the, curriculum or approach that the parent is taking that kind of mimics the school, system, or the school, the whole grade levels and all of that. It just isn't working. And we just have so many kids, coming to us now that are so different and so unique that the box, the box of school that we've been using for the last 150 years-ish, is just, it's no longer working. And it's not just for the special needs, extra needs, extremely different kids, but even just, dyslexia, or, even a kid that just has one label or one, difference, whether it's sensory processing or, whatever it is, school is still miserably failing for them. And so, that's the reason that I feel passionate about this, is because all of the kids who are trapped, in a system that is just not only is it not meeting their needs, but it's causing mental illness, anxiety, depression, the list goes on with, the awful side effects of school. So, it was true for my children that leaving school and not trying to do school at home, we didn't try to do school at home at all, really, because I already knew the homework was, first grade homework was already so awful that I knew we weren't going to be able to do any school at home around the kitchen table. So we didn't do that, but I did try school with my my autistic son. I started out, so we did, my first child did kindergarten and first grade, and by the first week of second grade, we were done. So we brought him home, unschooling. We just knew unschooling was the answer for every kid, right? Because it's the most customizable, education. So whatever your kids' needs are, you can meet them through unschooling. And so, I was convinced that every child needs to unschool, whatever that means, for that child. And then my Tristan is his name, my autistic child, was a baby at that time. So, we were just beginning to learn about him and learn about his extra needs and all of his differences. And once he was 2, we knew that we were dealing with a child that was very far outside the bell curve. And so I kind of started back at square one. I didn't know if I could unschool. Can I unschool a kid that if all he wants to do is Elmo, if the only thing he's interested in is Elmo, can I really, and I didn't know Sunrise. I'm a Sunrise parent too. So, I learned through Sunrise that you can use Elmo to teach, whatever, or to help your child learn whatever the thing is that they need to learn. But I didn't know all that. And so we did the preschool program for children with disabilities with the public school system here in Dallas. And I felt really guilty, institutionalizing my child. But, at the time I had a newborn, and I really kind of looked at it as respite care. And I thought, well, we'll see what these people know, right? These special ed folks who have, supposedly are trained, they know about autism, they know about the strict schedules that Kristen mentioned, that everybody thinks these kids need to be on a, rigid schedule, which was hard for me to create, as an unschooler and just with other kids, at home. So I thought, well, we'll see what they know. Well, he started at age 3 and we only made it about 6 months before, I knew that the system is just not set up for, these kids. My heart just breaks for, all the kids that, whose families either think they don't have another choice or really, don't have other options. So yeah, it's, we gave it a shot with 2 of my kids. My third child has never been to school, and we'll see if she decides she wants to try it sometime. But yeah, I have seen enough of the school system and just not just the public and private school system, but the system of school, the way that, education has been thought to be the right way of education is just not working for so many kids and so many families too, right? It's a stressor on the entire family.
Christina, you touched on so many things that I just want to dive into. I mean, you talked about the way that we as adults or parents perceive what education, what the system is good for. Like, for example, I always thought it was somebody else's job to educate my child. That was this belief that I had, that had I not accidentally found unschooling, I wouldn't have live the freedom that I've been living for the last 8 years. But what can we say to parents that have this foundational belief that is so contrary to what their children's needs are? And how do we, as parents who have those ideas still, that haven't deschooled ourselves, deal with the guilt of not following the right path? I say right in air quotes, for their children. You want to talk about that? Because you went through this personally in a very strong way.
Right, and twice, right? I did it with my somewhat typical child. He does have, OCD and some sensory processing issues. But, he presents as typical, and, it was easier with him because, I I taught preschool. I've always been a teacher of some kind throughout my life. So I knew that I could teach them if I needed to, and I wasn't worried about that. But there was a switch that has to flip, I think, in understanding that parents, I'm talking to all of you, you are the expert in your child. You are the one that knows the most about what your child needs, about how to, provide their needs, how to, customize the environment so that your child is, in their optimal, receptive state for learning. And so I think that's the biggest thing we are finding now in overall culture, that people are starting to understand that it's not just for education, but our medical needs. We are the expert of us, and so if we don't get a diagnosis that we feel like is proper, we need to find another doctor or another healer or another somebody that can help us until we know that we've found the answer that we need. So it really, they say unschooling is about trusting our children. But I think before we can trust our children, we have to trust ourselves, right? Once we learn, and that's part of like the classes that I'm working on, it's about changing those beliefs, right? All of these beliefs are so ingrained in our subconscious. They're in the collective consciousness, but they're also we're conscious of some of them, but some of them are, in our subconscious. And so it's just a process. Usually, most parents don't deschool overnight. It's you don't even deschool in 6 months. It takes years and years sometimes to undo all of that programming. And there are different ways that people can do it. And you can do it through experience. You can do it through, some different processes and techniques. But I think jumping in with both feet and just, surrendering to the life that is in front of you and the child that is in front of you, and learning to listen and learning to, really connect with your child is the most powerful way to see how what BS, like Julie said, is, in the way of, living life in the way that's best for you and for your child. So yeah.
Everything you just said like resonates with me. It makes me so happy in so many ways. Which, so for me, I was that person that like I would find something that would start to work, that would work for a kid that I would deeply and totally had grown in an attachment to, or I would develop something new within my physiology that needed to be adapted to migraines, or leaky gut has been a huge microbiome adventure for me. Oftentimes I would go through therapies with the kids, and I would go through them, and I would do them, and I would learn everything about them, and within every modality I would then want to get certified in it, because that's part of my genetic makeup and who I am and what I want to do. And very much like all the kids that I work with and that I love. And so I would get to these points where I would become certified in something, whatever it was, and then I would get to this point where I wouldn't be able to recommend the other things that I had learned, like within being the expert of whatever it was that I was doing. And the parents were always looking to me to tell them what to do. And I was always like, well, don't you guys know? Wouldn't you know better? I was always asking these questions, and it would at some point in my early 20s, I kind of started to wonder or question with those beliefs, or what Julie was saying, like that feeling like that imposter, like, oh my gosh, if I'm asking them questions, then how do I look like I know what I'm doing? And, oh, maybe they think that I'm not, like, I shouldn't be in their house, or, if I sit down and read a magazine while their kids are running around, like what right do I have to be like in their home? And, but my gut was telling me that like sometimes I needed to sit down and paint my nails and let the kid stim or ism or whatever it is that the parent was calling it at that time, or that I was calling it at that time, and just let the kid be like who they were in that moment at that time. I don't care if they're that way tomorrow or the next day or yesterday, but like right now they need to look at water and let it run for 20 minutes, and I'm just going to let them do that. And so it wasn't until I found natural play therapy that I really started to learn that it was okay to allow myself to trust my gut. It was okay to allow parents to trust their guts. And all of these modalities that I had learned about were very, very useful. And now I have permission as a natural play therapy provider to like offer all of it, not as an expert because I'm no longer certified in any of it by choice. I'm not a certified teacher. I'm not, like all of these things. I have all these degrees, and I just am like, yeah, I like play with kids at camps, and I do this and I do that. But people ask me about their kids, and I just say, well, you've been with your kid for 9 years. What do they love? What is it that, do they sleep at night? Like you tell me who your kid is, and then from there we can start to work as detectives and really start to figure out like who they are and what they're all about. And why don't we ask them? Because a lot of the times, so I've been in so many IEP meetings that just thinking about IEP meetings makes me want to like vomit. They're awful, and I do them for camps. I read IEP evaluations. A lot of the first processes that I do with families that hire me as a coach is to go in and look at the child's current schooling situation, and oftentimes I find out later that parents they really just hired me in order to have somebody tell them that it was okay to pull their kids out of school, because they wanted to do it in the first place, but they needed an expert to tell them to do it. And also then it's on me, right? If like it's a total disaster, well, Kristen told them to do it, so which I'm fine with being the scapegoat, but like IEPs, I sit in these meetings and we never ask the child, and more often than not, it's because we assume they can't tell us because they're nonverbal, or they don't have like how would they know, or they half the time they're unconscious, or
Lainey's asking what is an IEP? It's an individualized plan. So if you haven't been in the school system, then you're not going to know what an IEP is, and that's a good thing to not know. It sounds like a good thing, right? I mean, unschooling to me is the most individualized education plan there is, right? Like when I heard about an IEP, I was like, oh my God, every kid should have an IEP. Like what, really? We're only giving them to some kids? Like,
yeah. It sounds wonderful. It really does. It sounds amazing. But the problem with IEPs, with individual education plans, is that when someone else is forming it for you, when you're not in charge of your individual education plan, it's a complete disaster.
And I think that touching on something else you said, when you were talking about, a lot of times unschoolers have to get over the belief that doing nothing, there's so many times when parents will say, well, my kids just don't do anything. And you're like, really? They just stare at the wall all day? Well, no, they do blah, 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 and they're doing all these things. And so finding the learning opportunities in those things that the kids are interested in, is of course part of unschooling, but more importantly, I think is being okay with the kid really doing nothing, like stimming for an hour. If your kid needs to stim, sometimes my kid just needs to stand in the shower and have the water pour on him for an hour. And, if that's what he needs, then it's going to be a much better day, afterwards, if he's gotten that need filled, and then learning can happen. No learning's going to happen if the stimming behavior isn't allowed to, run its course, or they aren't allowed to get that sensory input that they needed. And so I think that that's a terrible symptom of our our beliefs about school and learning is that we have to be doing school all the time, you know, like you do at school. You're always doing, is this a learning activity? We even, our toys now, you know, I've noticed since my 16-year-old was born, in the time period, you know, to then when my now 9 and 6-year-olds were born, all the toys now, they tell you what the child learns. You know, on the box, it'll say, this toy teaches this skill and this skill and this skill and this skill, because we're not allowed to just buy a toy because it's fun, you know. And so it's this whole mindset that every moment has to be a teachable moment, and we have to be, you know, making the best use of our time. And it's just a really unfortunate symptom of buying into this whole school system that, you know, doesn't value downtime. So yeah.
And also downtime for parents too, or just for grown-ups, adults. If any, I mean, there's a terminology for it in natural play therapy, which we call recharge and deepen. But it's really just relaxing and allowing yourself to relax. And many of the parents that I've worked with, you know, they feel guilty just doing the dishes, let alone going and reading a book or getting their hair done or going out to get a glass of wine with their best friends, you know, because their child needs them. And absolutely, but if you're not able to function, your child isn't gonna really, it's not gonna help either. And also, you're not teaching that. A lot of the reasons why kids STEM, and this is kind of controversial, but I feel, and I've been told by children and grown up older teens who use rapid prompting method, which is a letterboard form of communication, and also a vehicle in which to educate children who use multiple neural pathways at one time and have lots of sensory stimulation coming at them at once. And I actually use a similar way of teaching myself, right, as rapid prompting method. But the part of the reason why they STEM, or they have told me, I STEM because it's comfortable and my body knows how to do it, and I don't know what to do. Like I'm saying stop learning, or I'm saying, you know, the F word, or I'm pushing you away because my body is doing that, or I'm just flapping my hands in front of my face, but I want you to continue with this lesson. I want you to keep going. I want to keep learning, but my body is telling me something different, and, you know, please keep going. So a lot of times, you know, I would stop, or I would join in a particular STIM, which is a self-stimulatory behavior. Yes, I just saw that. You know, a repetitive motion that your body just needs to do. Oftentimes, my STIM that I do on a regular basis, and I've learned to cover up in various ways, is I'll go like this. And so now I go like this, you know, or I go like this, or this, or yeah, exactly, yeah, like just do. I talk with my hands, you know. But I'm doing thank you, Julie. I'm doing a self-stimulatory behavior, and it's because it's comfortable and it's calming, and it feels better. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily want to be doing that at that time. And so back to parents, you know, if kids see you taking a break, then they learn that there are actually appropriate, whatever that even means. They're useful, purposeful. Some of the words that come up with the letterboard a lot is the word purposeful. And I don't know where these kids get these words, because they don't know each other. And as a parent, you couldn't possibly be like faking it with the letterboard, but they all come up with the word purposeful or meaningful or of use. That's another one. I want to be of use. And so if you show kids that you can sit down and read a book when you're fidgety, that's of use. Or knit, or do a puzzle, that's of use. It's of value. It might not be educational. It may just be fun.
Well, everything is educational, right?
I feel that way too, but a lot of times I'm told, like, I'm just letting kids waste their time.
Right. And it's just unfortunate that we have this belief and this mindset that, you know, anything that it doesn't fall under a certain category of activities and topics and all of that is not educational. You know, learning isn't happening unless you're sitting at a desk and there are worksheets available. I don't know. There are all these different beliefs, right, that we have, but the whole downtime, recharge, you know, all of those things are so valuable. And, you know, just learning about myself and reading the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, you know, helped me be more accommodating of my own special needs and my own, you know, need for downtime that I didn't realize, you know, sometimes I would instinctively take, but a lot of times I didn't. And, you know, and it leads to burnout. It leads to, you know, sensory overload if you don't take care of you. And so, of course, taking care of ourselves is important so we can take care of others, but also for the, you know, for being the role model of showing our kids, you know, self-care and how important self-care is.
And there's so much pressure for all kids to succeed, and there's pressure on the parents to get their kids up to speed. There's such a fear of their children being behind, and this is such an important topic because it's a plague on society right now. And unschooling is, of course, the absolute opposite for so many people, to believe that downtime and surrendering and things where we're not doing something like meditation is a way to reconnect with this voice that can be lost in so many children who've either had a difficulty or have been labeled in a negative way, not a positive label where it helps them feel empowered, but like I was labeled negatively and it was very disempowering. But all of this that we're dealing with, for me, is healed and soothed when we have that downtime. But the pressure of also this sense that there's something to be fixed. And when I was growing up and physically I was different, I had skeletal issues, I had arthritis in my joints, and I was only 4 foot tall. So I looked different, I moved differently. Everything was different about me. And I had the sensation that I couldn't be fixed, but I needed to be fixed. And the children I've talked to who have either developmental issues or intellectual delays all feel there's this sense that they need to be fixed. And this is so contrary to why we have these differences, and why I think we come forth into this world with differences that cannot be fixed. And that's a good thing, because there are so many, we are square pegs and we will not be pushed into round holes. It's just not going to happen. It's not even healthy. And there are so many examples of when we instead step into that other world, like parents who finally realize they need to step into their child's world, not the other way around, or not forcing the child into the school system, but as Kristen was saying, asking, oh my gosh, partnering with the children to ask them, what would help you? What would be great for you? And in these IEP meetings, they were often talked about as if they weren't there. They would ask them to come in because they were told to. I don't know, the state maybe decided that, oh, let's have the kids in these meetings. And then they weren't asked anything. And it was worse because they were talked about. I had the same experience when I was standing in front of a room full of doctors. They're all staring at me with their clipboard and writing notes, this was before computers. and not consulting me, not caring that here I was, a human being in front of them. They only saw the diagnosis. They only saw the external, and they talked about me in Latin and as if I weren't there. And I see that happening with children today who don't fit the mold, who are born to break the mold, and yet the system is still saying, God, how do we fix them? How do we get them to fit in? And that's not why we're here. We were never sent here to fit. We were sent to change this whole paradigm that we all need to conform in order to, so that nobody's afraid of, the differences and the huge diversity. That 8 million people have 8 million different ways of learning and being and loving who they are, how they learn. And if, as parents, we step in, and I get as confused as anyone who's trying to help my kids, because I can't do it for them. And they learn differently from me, they learn differently from each other. But I can still, as they say today, or a common phrase, hold the space with them, be with them, listen, enjoy what they enjoy, even though I don't always, but I appreciate, what they enjoy, and I can see what it does for them. But I also know that the ways that they're looking at life, even if it's different from my own, doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be celebrated.
Yay.
I would love Brenda to jump in. I know you've been waiting. I know you wanted to say something in regards to the whole idea of conditioning. The floor is yours, Brenda.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say, all of you touched on something that I totally agree with, that we can't put our kids into this square mold or into this box. They're all different. And I've got 5 of them, and they're all very different. Even the ones that have sensory processing disorder, they're still different in how that affects them. Even though they have the same disorder, it's still different. One thing I would want to say to parents if they're stepping out of the school system is to trust your children. And yes, like Christina said, trust yourself, because you know better than anybody else what your child needs and what their passions are. Nobody else can, decide that except for you. And you know that because you spend so much time with them. So that's something that I wanted to touch on. And, listening to your gut, because your gut will tell you if you're on the right direction or if you're in the wrong direction. And, we can't condition these kids, we can't make them into somebody they're not. We can't fix them. They are who they are, and we need to love them for who they are, not for who we want them to be, because they will never be who we imagine them to be. When we were pregnant with them, we had this image of this child and who they'd be and what they grow up to be. They're never going to be that, and we're going to be disappointed. Growing up, my dad had this set idea of who I'd be, and I have special needs, and so school was so hard for me, and I was put on IEPs. And like Julie said, it is so hard to be in a room with all these people, and they're saying all these things, and not one of them asks you what would help you. What can we do for you? It's hard because you want to scream, but they won't listen. And that was a big part of what clicked for me when I learned about unschooling was, I took my own experience and looked at my own high school and middle school life, and I thought, wow, I can't put my kids through that. They will never be able to be who they are and thrive if I put them in that environment. They won't be happy. And I don't want to take that from my kids, because to me, nothing is more important than joy. And if they're working at McDonald's making minimum wage and they're happy, I've succeeded. If they want to go to Africa and help children that are sick and starving, I've succeeded if they're happy. It doesn't matter if they go to college or if they have a career that makes a lot of money. as long as they're happy. And that's what is most important, is the happiness of our children. And Christina had mentioned something about Elmo and her, if a child only likes a certain subject, how do you make that work? There's so many ways. I mean, my son wants to be a paleontologist. His thing is dinosaurs. And he had a hard time getting out of the house for a while. He had a lot of agoraphobia. He had fear of leaving the house. And I signed him up for this class to go with a paleontologist and dig for fossils. And he was so excited. And he had so much fun, and that helped get him out of the house. He was terrified, and he had a meltdown the whole way because of the anxiety and stuff, but he did awesome, and he had a great time. But there's so many ways with just like dinosaurs that you can learn. You can count dinosaurs. You can get dinosaur ABC books. You can, make a dinosaur-shaped cake. There's so many things out there that stem, and it's like a tree that with all these branches and leaves and the roots, and it's very fascinating. But don't change your child, and don't let a school system that's failing allow you to fail your child. Listen to them, hear them, let them decide, and trust them, because they know better than anybody else what is good for them, because they know their intuition and their in their heart. They know. So that's what I wanted to add. So thank you.
That was powerful. Thank you so much, Brenda. And I think trusting your intuition and trusting your gut and trusting that instinct that we have as facilitators, as mamas, as human beings, man, it's in there. We got it. We just have to learn to trust that and to listen to it. Oh boy. Anyway, we're going to take a short break. I cannot believe an hour has flown by already. We're going to watch a video, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to continue the conversation. But if you're watching live, I invite you to type in any questions that you might have for this panel, and we'll get to them after we come back from break. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Oh, heavenly day, all the clouds blew away. Got no trouble today. With anyone. Smile on your face. I live only to see. It's enough for me, baby. It's enough for me. Oh, heavenly day, heavenly day, heavenly day. It's a little time we can borrow. Forget all our troubles and these moments so few. Oh, we go right now, the only thing that all that we really have to do is have ourselves a heavenly day. Trees sway. Oh, can't see no other way.
Go back.
We hope that you enjoyed that video. It was, for me, it was such an emotional video to watch. It was just a pure showing of self-acceptance, and I just thought it was so beautiful. I would love to hear any thoughts from our panelists about that video and what it means to accept yourself as somebody who is different, and what it means to accept and support your children who may be considered different. Julie, why don't we go to you first?
My parents, I know, really struggled when I was born. I was just so moved by that video because it was parents, you know, connected to their emotion, okay with the fact that they will and have, you know, gotten angry, felt despairing, but that it's going to be okay. There's going to be help when you need it. Don't forget to ask for help. What I was thinking about before the break is when a parent is given a diagnosis and their life is changed and they think it's changed for the worse, but it's actually this transformational path that, you know, changes not only the parents, not only the child who's coping with the differences, but also the siblings. And this isn't to romanticize it and say it's all wonderful, but there is incredible strength and compassion that ripples out to everyone in the child's life. And I had a really special thing happen a couple of years ago. A friend of the family emailed me about my memoir and was very complimentary, and then she wrote something so odd out of the blue. She said, that big argument in your family, it's a chapter in my book. My family had an enormous blowout at Christmas time, and she said that argument was because your siblings were so angry at your parents when they found out they could be carriers of SED, which is the type of dwarfism I have. And I remember reading that email and going, what? My siblings, I have 5 older siblings, were angry? I never knew anything. And then I thought, oh, I've never even thought about that they could be concerned for their children, that was something that they had to deal with in their lifetime. And I was really hurt and upset and angry at myself that I never occurred to me that my siblings had their own burden to carry. So, well, I quickly emailed them because there'd been so much miscommunication in our family. I wanted to see, is this true? Are you all angry? And I emailed 2 sisters and my older brother. My older brother I thought would be the most straightforward, and my sisters would probably try and prop me up, but my brother would be straight with me. Both sisters emailed right back and went, I don't know where she's getting that from. That argument was about dad and his temper, mom and whitewashing. It was not about you. And I went, well, that's what I thought, but it never occurred to me that you might have been struggling. And then I waited for my brother kind of nervously, like, geez, maybe he was the one. And he emailed back, the brother who usually writes 3 words on an email. And it was this really long email. And I braced myself. And I started reading, and it was the most beautiful thing. He was 8 years old, or almost 9 when I was born. And he has all these beautiful memories that how special my parents, you know, they were excited and they treated me like everybody else. And he said, as I grew up, I came to realize the differences. And I memorized this little paragraph because it meant so much to me. He said, your presence gave us something special we didn't have before. And although it brought a wound and a suffering, because we shared in every suffering of yours, we were the better for it. You made us more human and therefore more happy. And I bawled. I couldn't even read the screen anymore. I thought, what? I thought I was a burden all those years. I thought they had suffered with me, but therefore I had crushed them. And no, it was that their beauty, their humanity had to be pulled out. To have a sister, and we also have another brother with the same diagnosis, to have that effect was both a burden and a liberation, because we all learned what we were made of, and we learned more and more what mattered. And we learned that, love was not about the gift wrap, the outside. Love was not about how smart I was or how fast I could run or whether I could do math. That didn't have anything to do with the love of a family. And my brother's sort of overview changed my perception of myself in a way that I hadn't even realized was missing. So for parents out there, maybe in the early stages of struggling with children who present, a lot of work, a lot of heartache, it has immense gifts that you would never be given without this child. I love that one line that a parent held up in the video, "Her eyes will sustain you." And I thought, because, the eyes are the windows of the soul, and no matter what's going on around, no matter how difficult it gets, her eyes will sustain you. It's like that love and that soul will be there. It will never be extinguished. And no matter how hard it gets, there will be that connection if we allow it.
That was really beautiful, Julie. That was really touching. I have a different perspective. The video it brought tears to my eyes. From my perspective, it was because I didn't have that parent. I had the parent that wanted to fix me. And so I say to parents out there, don't try and fix your children, because now I'm struggling with my own special needs, and it's hard and it's painful. And it's so important to love your children for who they are. If they are raging, let them rage. If they're crying, let them cry. Don't tell them to calm down. Don't tell them not to rage. If they're breaking something they're not supposed to, get them a punching bag. Get them something to get that anger out. Because I wasn't allowed to do that, and it suppressed so much inside me that I had now am struggling with my own childhood trauma. So for me, it brought back memories of not having that, of being told that I am a burden, that I'm not the daughter that they wanted, or the sister, and I make life hard. It's heartbreaking. So when parents, even though they're trying to help, and they feel like what they're doing is from a place of love, they're intentionally harming their children, by putting them on these IEPs and trying to change them and make them different and stop them from having these behaviors or feeling these human emotions that are real, that we all should have the ability to feel safely. As long as we're not hurting people and breaking property, we need to be able to feel those emotions. And so I really loved what you said, Julie. That really touched me, and you brought tears to my eyes. Thank you.
Brenda, I was listening to what you were saying about feelings, the importance of being able to having the permission to feel your emotions, and then in connection to labeling or needing to fix. And for me, it wasn't until I started to tie in my emotional well-being into my recovery. And at that point, the point that I started to really acknowledge my feelings, my emotions, the things that I had stuffed down deep, deep, deep into my stomach, which is probably why I had so much stomach illness. It wasn't until then that I started to heal. And I think there's a big, big difference between recovering, healing, and fixing someone. And just listening to your story, I had, my experience was closer to that, but it really wasn't from my parents' perspective intentional. They were doing and saying the things that they thought were going to help me, like, and what it really was they just we didn't have the knowledge that we have now with positive psychology, the words of affirmation. I mean, all that was out there, but it was considered woo-woo at the time. So I was being told things that they thought were helpful, like, in 10 years you're not going to know any of these people anyways. Well, you know what? There was a group of girls, and 10 years down the line, I barely know them. They're on my Facebook, but they're all still friends. But they weren't my friends at that time. They didn't understand me. They weren't accepting me, and that's all okay. But to hear in 10 years, you're not gonna know any of them, that just made that more true, because I disconnected myself, and instead of looking for a connection, I disassociated myself even more. I went from well, I'm different and I'm just going to be different, and those girls can be the same, and and that just created this anger that I then later needed to release. And I did that through network spinal analysis and through many different things that really helped to heal me. Like, sound therapy really healed me. And so there are a lot of things that within my physiology I've been able to change over time, just so that I can be more comfortable. So that there was a time where I was also agoraphobic in college. There was a point where I was taking all it's almost embarrassing. I was taking all distant learning classes, but I lived 4 feet away from the building that I was supposed to be in. So I had managed to set it up so that I was doing all distance learning, and my parents had no idea that I wasn't actually leaving the house. They were paying my rent, they were doing amazing things for me, but they had no idea that I had set up this comfortable little bubble for myself, and I was not helping myself. I was hindering myself. So I like to think of the Buddhist monks who did the water experiment. Do you guys know that? There were these lady knows. There were these Buddhist monks who did this water experiment, and really quickly, they labeled some of the water bad, awful names, and then they labeled the other water really, really great names, like you're beautiful, you radiate, you shine, you're the crystalline light of the world, like all these incredible things. And they looked at the water. And is that it? Can you see? Oh. They looked at the water, and over time, the water that they also ignored a bunch of water. And this is what I found the most interesting, was the water that was completely and totally ignored. That was the water that did the worst. It became septic. And I think that when we just straight up ignore humans, like it burns our souls. But if we tell ourselves that we're bad, that we're horrible, that you're no good, that you're just a little bit slow, or you have you're short, or whatever it is, well, then you're gonna start to take that on over time. It doesn't matter if you're the skinniest person in the world. If your brother tells you every single day you're fat, you're gonna start to wonder if you've gained a little weight. And but if you're told you are like incredibly knowledgeable in this particular thing, and I love everything that you do to learn more and more about it every day. If you tell them that you are a beautiful, amazing child who is, you know, funny and smart and loves rocks, you know, and I see you, I notice you, I hear you, I acknowledge you. I don't necessarily like what you're saying right now, but that's okay. And I mean, for me, like, I can have a situation, like I can fall down an escalator due to a seizure, which I have, and I can see that as a terrible, awful, no good, like straight up horrible thing. Or, you know, I can realize that I fell down an escalator and other things happened before I did that day that were actually really good. You know, somebody told me they loved me, or you know, it happens that on that day I had written a dissertation and I had finished it. And so, you know, it doesn't make that day, I could decide that falling down the escalator made it the worst day ever, and totally negate the fact that I just finally finished a dissertation that I've been trying to write for close to a year. But then what does that do for me? Absolutely nothing, right? Thank you for letting me ramble.
I loved what you said, Kristen, and Brenda, I'm so glad you shared what you did, because I think your situation is more common than mine, that your parents were not helpful and in fact traumatizing you, and you're doing it differently. So that's pretty amazing. You're pretty rocking out, because you've managed to take something that you did not get and give it to the ones you love. I mean, and what Kristen was just saying about, you know, saying to the children that I love that you know that much, I love you. Now that's your job for you, you know, for all of us as parents, to give ourselves, be the champion for ourselves that our parents were not, and teach and parent ourselves the way we want to parent our children, even with all the unknown and the mysteries. There are so many ways to up our own view of ourselves, like Kristen was saying, and seeing and making choices just in every day, that, you know, there are 100 things that go well each day and maybe one that doesn't. Don't focus on the one that doesn't. Oh, but what I wanted to say was the point that both of you about emotions. That is just huge, because we can't heal what we don't feel, as they say. And Brenda, what you were talking about, like, let your children express themselves. This is the ultimate healing for our society that is incredibly repressed about that feminine side, that, you know, intuitive side, the right brain, that is weak and yucky, and hold that down, don't let that out. And I think all the children that are coming forth that are square pegs, you can't hold it down. And you can try to drug them and you can try to institutionalize them. It won't work. So thank God, because we are going to find a new way to be okay with our emotions, by using, you know, an art therapy. Writing my book was the best therapy I ever did. And it was because it allowed me to grieve, and it allowed me to feel all of the humiliation and shame that I took on as my own as I was growing up, and really loathed myself. I acted like I didn't, but I did. And allowing myself to feel and accept that and honor that was huge. So thank you both for bringing that up. Christina, I bet you wanted to add something.
No, I did, because, you know, all the talk about, I totally agree with everybody who's talking about we need to accept our children as they are. And it's not, you know, a lot of what, you know, our children present to us does not need to be fixed, for sure. I think there are, you know, some elements, especially the more affected a child is, there are some times when you need, you know, some dietary stuff, or some, you know, some different things that, that can help soothe some of the difficulty and some of the suffering that, you know, might be a result of their extra needs. But I think what's interesting is that, so say you have, you know, all of the issues, right, that the kid has, and there's a line somewhere about, you know, what needs to be fixed and what needs to be accepted, right? And And when we're unschooling our kids, we can push that line further and further. There's much more that can just be accepted than needs to be fixed. But if you're trying to fit into school, then that line has to go back to, there's a lot more that needs to be fixed about a kid if they're trying to fit into the box, into the system, into the round hole. And so I think that's one of the huge gifts that we can give our kids that are different in any way, is to deschool ourselves. And, no matter what we're doing, if we're doing, school at home or some sort of version of home education, find a way to move that line, to where there's less and less to fix, and just more and more that we can accept and accommodate, and just create an environment where that kid can be the way they are, and be the way they are naturally, in a comfortable way. So that was just, I just had that thought about, there is a line between what does need to be healed and what, needs to just be accepted. But that line really shifts depending on the parent's mindset, and then also what kind of schooling you're trying to do, or even just, trying to fit into the world.
I would like to start a conversation about the labels and expectations in the unschooling community. There are a lot of unschoolers out there that are against any kind of label. And when they hear that you've labeled your child, they don't agree with it. And I've had debates about that, since, we started this journey in 2009. And when we first started unschooling, the first year and a half, 2 years was very, very hard, because we jumped into radical unschooling, and we jumped in head first and took everything away, and it was total chaos. And it was very hard, because in my situation, those things that fit these other children in the unschooling community didn't work for mine. And it was very frustrating. And I feel like I was failing at unschooling, because my children couldn't do these things that was being suggested when I would post on a group or a forum, about a situation about like bedwetting or dietary stuff and things like that. And I would get frustrated, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go for help. I didn't know who to talk to. And I felt alone, because I had people actually attacking me within the community and telling me that I'm putting my kids in a box and I'm harming them because I pursued diagnosis for them, because I listened to my gut and learned that they needed something more. They needed something else. And I needed help understanding what I needed to do, because I didn't have anybody else giving me that information. So I want other unschoolers and those that are looking into unschooling to know that it's okay to get a diagnosis, that it's okay to seek therapy, that it's okay if you choose to use meds. That is your choice as the parent. You know your child best. We have approached therapy. We have tried meds. It was an approach we needed at that time. And I got people coming to me saying that that wasn't okay, that's not unschooling. But if my child is asking for help, then that is unschooling, because they're asking for help. And my 11-year-old who has the mood disorder had asked for help because she was having severe suicidal thoughts and depression. So she wanted to try therapy and meds. And so we allowed her to do that. And because we allowed her to do that, it got her to where she could slow down the thoughts, and the suicidal thoughts went away, to where she could learn new self-care tools, to where she could become better equipped to handle her symptoms. And so I want people to understand that labels aren't bad, diagnosis isn't bad, that they help people. They help people see a direction. It's just like somebody being diagnosed with cancer or with diabetes. Mental illness is no different. Neither is depression or anxiety, or like what Kristen dealt with agoraphobia. It's real, and these people live with it. But there's people in the unschooling community that feel like depression isn't real, or that mental illness isn't real, or the ADHD isn't real. But these kids struggle, and their struggles are real, and they need special tools beyond what just the basis of unschooling can provide for them. So I want people to understand that diagnosis is okay. What isn't okay is allowing the diagnosis to define you and to use it as an excuse to not learn new skills and be a good person, to hide behind it and let it overcome you. That's where the problem becomes. And if parents use the diagnosis to judge their children, they're no different than the other children. They just have these special things going on. So I just wanted to share that part.
I think there's something you just said made me realize, like, I think just like we have to deschool from the programming about, you know, the way learning should look, we also have to, I don't know, deprogram ourselves about what the labels are, right? Like when we have a kid and, you know, they have this issue, we hear the word dyslexia, and there's all this programming we have, right, about what dyslexia means and what that's going to mean for your kid. And usually none of that is true, right? When I heard the word autism, it was like, you know, I had all these ideas about it. You know, Rain Man, of course, is one that, and not, you know, hardly any of it that I imagined was true or ended up being true for my child in our life. So, you know, it's a process of deprogramming ourselves from what those labels even mean, and just like you said, using it as a tool, as a clue of like what direction, you know, what resources can we find to help our kid. But you know, the label definitely doesn't have to define you. And I think that's the journey that a lot of us parents, you know, of these different kids are learning. You know, that's part of why we're here, is to learn that, to understand that, you know, we create a lot of meaning, you know, that isn't even there and wouldn't necessarily even be true. And when we can get past the labels and really look at our child and really get to know our child, then you know, the label is just another tool. Like Lainey said, just like, you know, reading or math is a tool to accomplish something in life, you know.
I have a great tool. It's really quick. It's called the watch process. It's super duper helpful because oftentimes that'll happen. Like I'll be told this story about a kid and then I'll go in and I'll find out that like very different things are happening. And so Julie Sando taught me natural play therapy again. I love it. She taught me the watch process, which means to wait, allow, theorize, celebrate, and then create a habitude of what attitude you want to continue with whatever story you then choose to create from what you've seen. And you know, the watching, you know, really it's really the waiting that's the hardest. The allowing, it depends on who you are and what your makeup is. And then, you know, most humans like to theorize. They like to come up with, you know, why is my kid tapping their pencil, or why, you know, am I constantly craving salty foods? Or, you know, we like to come up with these ideas and these stories. But if we can sit down and we can really just give our kids the time to, I mean, I have this kid at camp, and so when you work at camp, that's where, you know, that allowance is. There's all these rules, you know, you can't pick up sticks, you can't pick up rocks. It's a 7-year-old boy, he's gonna pick up sticks and he's gonna pick up rocks, and you know, I just want them to come home with their shoes on. And but they you know, they walk around and you know, they're supposed to be in their group, and I just will have so many 17-year-old counselors coming up to me being like, how do I make them stay in the group? And I say, you don't. You watch and you see, what are they gravitating towards? Well, he's always going over to soccer, or he's always doing this, or he's always doing that. And well, okay, maybe he wants to play soccer, you know, could it be that? And so if we can just like take a beat and really watch and allow, theorize and celebrate ourselves, especially just for like doing it, for stopping and letting our kids do what they want to do, and then being able to understand that they're taking care of themselves. So often all of these things that we're trying to squash, it's just somebody trying to take care of themselves, like hiding in a room, you're just trying to survive. So there's got to be a reason for it, right? So the more we can watch. I love that, Christina.
All behavior is communication, right? That's the
absolutely
biggest thing. It's for us to always remember, no matter whether, if our child is verbal or nonverbal, that's of course we understand it then, but even children who have very well developed verbally still, and adults, all behavior is communication, right? Once you really get that and start to listen to behavior as much as you listen to words, then that is huge.
I wanted to add something about what Brenda was talking about, and that there's a right way to unschool. Well, what? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Because unschooling is so individualized, 8 million of it's individualized, a fingerprint that will never, ever, ever, ever be repeated on this earth ever. How could there be a right or wrong for that individual that other people in this community or on this board, Brenda, were telling you? I find that maybe that's the extreme side of trying to defend a position as an unschooler, because it is so outside our comfort zones. It's outside the status quo that they have decided themselves what is right unschooling and what is wrong unschooling. And I'm glad that now, of course, after you were somewhat tortured, but now that right and wrong lives in our heart, and it's really about your family, about your kids, and you know them better than any expert, but any other parent who dare say that you shouldn't do this, this, and this because that's not unschooling, even if it was you shouldn't do this and this because it's not good. It's really and so far away from what I think of as my unschooling friends and community at, Life Without Instructions, our conference coming up, that there's so much compassion and there's so much freedom. And I didn't hear anybody saying to anybody else, that's not how we do it here. It was always wanting to support each other in however we were managing. And I loved what Kristen said about we all as adults and children are just trying to feel safe, to protect ourselves, and our behaviors reflect that. And we don't want to, I forget what she said, something about don't squash the thing, don't squash the child, learn, watch, listen, celebrate, all those wonderful things. So thank you for bringing that up, both of you, all of you. This is so inspiring to me because I resonate with everything and think, oh, right. We could go for like weeks on just that topic.
Yeah, one of the first ways, I guess, that we were radically unschooling, which for anybody that doesn't know, it just means that you take the unschooling principles of trusting your children and allowing them to make as many choices as possible. You extend that to things like food and bedtime and, other decisions in life besides just education. So we were radically unschooling. And once we had a diagnosis for my second child, one of the biggest interventions and I guess ways that people ameliorate some of the suffering that some autistic folks have is through diet, right? So, and my first dilemma was, well, how can I be a radical unschooler if my kid, isn't going to be able to just eat whatever he wants? And over the years, I've come to understand that I really feel like, if you're listening to your child, if you're noticing that when they eat something with red dye and they go bonkers within the hour, that is unschooling still, because you're listening to your child, you're seeing, how it affects them. And, sometimes they might be unhappy that you're going to say no red dye, but I feel like if we still lived in a hunter-gatherer society and we still ate food that came out of the ground and, wasn't adulterated with all these chemicals, I think we would be able to allow our kids to have food freedom. But we live in a world where so much of our food does not have food in it. It has, all these awful ingredients. And then, on top of that, all of the toxins and chemical sensitivities that cause gut dysfunction. So we can't even, digest gluten or whatever the thing is that might be food, but it's still, not something that we can do. So it's, food-like substances, exactly. And so we, as radical unschoolers, and especially, parents with kids who are different or have digestive distress or sensory, easily get sensory overload, if you can change your diet so that your nervous system is soothed, why would you not do that? And, I know that it's a big debate and it's a big controversy in the unschooling community, especially with the radical unschoolers. But, for me, it's a no-brainer, because if I can, give my child some supplements and detox my child and give them, a certain diet that helps them not have as many tantrums, then, I'm going to do that. So it is an interesting debate within this community.
What's so funny to me is because the community that I'm a part of, that is radical. The changing the diet, the like listening to what you're physically seeing within your child, and then making that choice, because they at that time don't have the ability to make that choice for themselves. When I was on gluten in an unhealthy way, I'm now at the point where I have healed my gut and it doesn't make me foggy, but I still eat soy, and I get these spider bite like things, and it's not even from the soy, it's the way the soy reacts to the progesterone in my body. But I didn't know that, or wouldn't have known that, or I really needed somebody to just say, we're taking you off gluten. And a lot of the kids that I work with, they go on rotational diets. They find themselves in a room with people coming in and coming out, and they're in the room and the door is locked, and they go through different therapies, and that doesn't seem unschooling. It seems like really scary, and what are you doing? But it's certainly not school, and it's absolutely what's necessary for those particular kids who are now going to school or being unschooled and out in the world, which is to me the end game. Participating, socializing. It really, 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 really depends on the human. And I don't even mean the kid, I mean the human. Like, what do you need right now? And it might be different at any given moment, because our bodies shed every 7 years. And it's just so important to acknowledge that. Like, the person that you are married to is different than when you married them.
I love what you said, Kristen, and everybody's talking about, the unschooling community and the judgments from those, deciding whether or not you're doing it right. And that to me seems really counterproductive in so many ways. Unschooling is really about taking what works and letting go what doesn't. So I guess the judgments from others is something that you can just let go. I'm just really sorry that that's part of the community as well. So, but thank you for sharing all of those ideas. I can't believe how quickly these 2 hours have flown by. We're not done yet. We have time for actually going around to our panelists and asking for you to give any final remarks, closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience. And also, I want to give you each an opportunity to share any projects that you're working on, or websites, or books, or anything. So I'd like to give you that time and space to share what you've got going in your world. So, Julie, why don't we jump to you first?
I was just thinking that any attempt, whether it's called unschooling or whatever it's called, any attempt to standardize something, the way we do things, is attempting to fit people into a mold. And that's exactly why unschooling has evolved, so that we didn't have to feel squished into anything, and that we really could live out our heart and soul's call, which is going to be different from every other person, and particularly from our parents, and learning to grow away from them and be secure is even scarier for kids who have the limits that the society looks at and goes, what are you going to do with that? And so giving them this sense that there's so many rules and you have to do it right, all of that, like Lainey said, is so counterproductive and completely counterintuitive. Goes against the fact that we were born unique souls, but we're also one, that crazy paradox. We all are joined together in our hearts, but we are here on an individualized path to bring our unique brand of love, joy, pain, heartache to the world, and in a way where we feel safe doing that, and we help our children feel more safe, and that's going to look different for everybody. So I just love the fact that we all have added from a different perspective these ways to make the journey a little more soothing, a little less heartbreaking, and doing it together, not pushing each other away on these chat boards saying, you're not doing it right, but coming together and saying, it's not always easy. It's not going to be. We didn't sign on for an easy lifetime. If we did, it'd probably bore us to tears. So I'm at nothingshortofjoy.com, and our next exciting event is Life Without Instructions. Yay, Lainey, giving me the thumbs up. Actually, I hope the details are going to be here somewhere, because I don't have them right in front of me, but a wonderful unschooling conference, September 18th, I think it's beginning. So that's exciting, and I am so looking forward to seeing a few of you there.
Thank you, Julie. I wanted to add a little bit to what Christina was talking about with diet. It brings me to the point that again, we know our kids better, and sometimes our children need help deciding what they can eat and what they can't, because of the way it affects their body. And if it's affecting them through their behavior, you can only imagine what it's doing to the inside of their bodies. With my 6-year-old, I realized that something was off with him with diet. And so we did an elimination diet. And my goodness, it was like day and night. And I did get some comments about that, about being careful of the control I use around food, and how it might cause him to have a food disorder, or how it will affect our relationship. And I'm thinking, my goodness, when my kid eats it's gluten or dairy, it totally turns him into a totally different person, and he's not happy or in control of himself. And he's not able to say, whoa, something's not right. So I have to be the parent and say, okay, I got to step in and do what's right. So it goes back to doing what is right for your family, and not putting yourself into this radical unschooling or unschooling mold, that everybody does what's right for them and for their family, and nobody else can decide for that. Nobody else knows the whole puzzle but you. So you have to listen to your heart and to your gut and not to what everybody else says, and not care about them judging you or saying you don't unschool or you're not radically unschooling because you don't do this, this, or this, or because you're doing this, this, and this. Because it's not their choice, it's your family. And if the family agrees, then it's okay for your family. So I just wanted to add that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the show. I was very nervous, but now I feel a lot better, and I resonate with you guys so much, and it just makes me happy because this is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. Stigma needs to go away. It doesn't help. It's counterproductive, especially in a community like unschooling. It's very counterproductive, and it doesn't serve any purpose. So thank you.
You want me to go next? Okay, so what's coming up next? Well, I will be at Life Without Instructions, so I'm excited to meet Julie in person and to see you guys. So I'm doing, I'll be talking about extra needs, but then also the other stuff that I'm working on that Lainey mentioned is Psych K and Level Up. So if you go to radiantlivingandlearning.com, we're having a camp out this fall. You can see about the Level Up and the Psych K, which is about changing limiting beliefs, accessing the subconscious mind. We use lots of different processes to do that, and then changing those beliefs. So if anybody is having a hard time changing the beliefs about school, the beliefs about, labels, whatever the barriers are, there are ways to change that are painless. And you don't have to say affirmations, for 2 months in order to change it. You can, there are quicker ways to do it. So that's what I'm working on lately. And you can see it on the website where it says Psych K and Level Up. You can see those YouTube videos if you want to check out those processes, and I'll be adding more in the next few weeks. So yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody at Life Without Instructions.
I guess it's my turn. I want to be involved in all of these things. My friend Kate Friedman is going to be speaking at Life Without Instructions, and so I, haven't gotten my ticket yet, but I want one. Julie's like, come. I've been in micro school world, meaning that I've been concentrating on this little project in Brooklyn that I've got going. It's through cottageclass.com, which is an online marketing place for parents and providers to provide classes and educational, untraditional, alternative learning options. So whether that's micro schools, explorative learning labs, classes, or co-ops, I am now a part of that, and through Crayon Power. And so Crayon Power is about to launch its first explorative learning lab in Windsor Terrace. And right now we have a few spots left. I'm only taking 6 to 8 kiddos, and it really, really, really depends on the dynamic of the kids. And so we've been doing play groups, and the kids have been meeting each other, and they're creating the groups, and so hopefully, not hopefully, absolutely, we will be having a number of children. It looks like between 6 and 12, although it is pre-K to gray. We appear to be having children from the ages of 6 to 12 at this time who will be together, and Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in Windsor Terrace. So that's exciting. And then I have an online group called the Social Skills Group, where a number of children on the spectrum teach me Minecraft. It started off that way, but actually it ended up diverting from Minecraft to becoming, we wrote a book called Imaginate, which will be on, it's self-published on Amazon shortly, coming to you. And we created the book together, and it's about these amazing rainbow cats. And so we're looking, they're looking to have new friends in their play group and online, just like this on Zoom, and it's on Saturdays. And so, that will be on Crayon Power if you want more information.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen, and everybody, absolutely everybody on this panel was incredible. I just want to remind our audience that to some websites, you can go to the show notes page and find everything that you need there. I've learned so much. This is one of the topics that I had not a whole lot of experience with. And being a single parent, I have the one child, and that's the child that I have the most experience with. So I am so in awe and have so much respect for everybody's journeys, and oh my gosh, thank you all to my panelists for sharing everything that you shared on this show today. I didn't realize that almost everybody was going to be at Life Without Instructions. Our producer, thank you, Anne, for putting together this panel. She is actually the person that is producing and putting on Life Without Instructions conference, and Miro and I will be there speaking about world schooling, unschooling, and travel, the thing that we're passionate about. So if you guys can make it, if anybody who's watching this can make it, it's going to be such an awesome conference. And that takes place in New York, September 19th through the 22nd. And you can find more information at lifewithoutinstructions.net. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you, Nina, for also helping to put together the show. You're also producer extraordinaire, and I love you dearly. And thank you, as always. The deepest and most sincere thank yous go out to Mel and Biggie over at Conscious Consumer Network, who provide this incredible platform for these conversations about everything alternative. You can't find this in the real media, the traditional, conventional media. This is the real media. So thank you for making that possible. So that's it. We're going to wrap up this show. I just want to say, wherever you are and whatever you do, continue to always do it for the love of learning.
Conscious Consumer Network was designed to create a live broadcast TV network for free and independent media, and has been live on the air since the 1st of January 2015. CCN gets millions of minutes watched every month and is viewed in over 140 countries, having produced around 1,400 shows and counting.
And it's very hard to get on the mainstream media, of course, the corporate media that's getting tighter and more monopolized and more restrictive for any outside information.
The live broadcasts are free to view, and all shows are archived in high definition on YouTube. CCN plays host to a stellar team of broadcasters and producers, all of whom rely on the network to get their message and information out to the world. CCN has continued to evolve, constantly seeking to create greater media usage and opportunities for both broadcasters and viewers, including supporting projects such as the newly launched consciouscommunities.org, a brand new social media platform that is free to use and has been created for those dedicated to the pursuit of freedom, justice, peace, and sustainability to come together and co-create the solutions to a better world. Due to the constant heavy usage, we are in need of replenishing and replacing of key hardware and infrastructural wear and tear. This includes the fixing and replacing of parts of the live broadcast equipment system, as well as increasing storage capacities for content and projects. Without this, CCN and its affiliate projects will simply not be able to continue. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded project, and it is up to you all to keep CCN on the air. Support our funding drive with a donation or become a monthly pledger. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.